Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in and participating in our democracy. On behalf of the 14 chapters that make up the Indivisible Hawaii statewide network, we welcome you and all of Hawaiian residents to begin a call to action for representation that we deserve. I'm going to be hosting the event today as well as the event tomorrow. My name is Dr. Vanessa Zepeda. I moved to Hawaii almost 20 years ago. Now I'm UH alumni. I did my PhD in Australia and moved home about a year ago. I'm also the leader of the Indivisible Youth Action Group here at our Honolulu chapter. Today we have with us Sherry Bracken. Sherry Bracken is a well-known newswoman, formerly with the Hawaii Public Radio. Sherry has hosted dozens of candidate forums and newsmaker interviews, and we really appreciate her volunteering for us today to conduct these interviews. And she will also be with us tomorrow as well. In case you're not super familiar with what Indivisible Hawaii does, we are a grassroots organization dedicated to protecting our democracy and ensuring that the people, especially of Hawaii, have a voice in our government. We've held dozens of meetings with members of Congress, other elected officials. We've written over 180,000 postcards to battleground states and actively have advocated for policies and programs that benefit the people of Hawaii. We're also pretty well known for our participation in hosting the really, really big protests and rallies that we have, like our most recent one, the No Dictators protest. So we're really active in the community. And yeah, we don't really have a lot of time today. But before we get started, I want to remind everybody that after today and tomorrow's interviews, please be on the lookout for a survey in your inbox. We're going to do a follow-up survey. It'd be really great to get that as soon as possible, especially before Sunday evening. Great. Well, let's get started. Sherry, take it away.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to welcome Senator Jarrett Keohokalole. Aloha.
Aloha, good morning.
Senator Keohokalole, thank you so much for being here today. Our goal is to get to know you better and understand about your decision to run for United States House of Representatives, representing Congressional District 1. It's the seat currently held by Ed Case, and it covers urban Honolulu, Hawaii Kai, Mililani, Ewa, those areas. It's not the neighbor islands, not other places. And I'm guessing that probably many potential voters do not know you. So perhaps you could give us a little brief story about yourself and then why you have decided to run for U.S. Congress, because you're currently, of course, a state senator.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sherry, and good morning. And good morning, happy holidays, everyone who's watching. I'm Jarrett Keohokalole, and I'm a state senator in the legislature, and I'm a local dad who's trying to raise kids and keep my family together here in Hawaii. And the ability for us to do that is under attack by Trump. And I think we need more solutions to get our future on a better track. I am 42. I'm married. I have 3 kids. I grew up on Oahu. My mom, Marilyn, is a nurse who grew up in Medford, Oregon. And my dad, Adrian, is a construction worker whose family's from Hawaii. My wife, Ku'ulani, and I, well, she also grew up on Oahu. And we both went to UH Manoa. That's where we met. And after we graduated, we moved to New York for school and work. And when it was time to have kids, we decided to come home because we wanted to raise them near family in the same community we grew up in. And it wasn't until we got back that we realized we were really lucky to be able to do that, and that it's incredibly hard to do. And most families are headed in the other direction. And so that's why I got involved in public service. That's why I decided to run for office. And in 2014, I ran for state house. I was a big underdog, and I won. And then in 2018, I decided to run for the state senate. Again, a big underdog against a longtime known legislator on the windward side. And I won. And I'm running now because I want to change the direction of our state's future. And I want to help find solutions to our biggest problems. And I want families like mine to be able to stay here and raise their kids. And, if there's a challenge, so in my position now in the state legislature, what I've tried to do is when there's a challenge that I think will impact our future, I try and run to those problems and get involved, especially when we're in a crisis situation, because I feel like that's our responsibility. So I like to work on the hard stuff. I've worked on Red Hill, the crisis around the fuel spill. I've worked on the insurance crisis that broke out over the last 2 years that has really impacted affordability. I've been the health chair. I served as the health committee chair during COVID and have done a lot of work on healthcare, which is going to be an increasingly significant challenge because of the disruption caused by the big bill. Vacation rentals, I was involved with reproductive rights after Roe versus Wade was overturned. I've done a lot of work on our energy future, including pushing back on policies around our electric utility that I don't think are in the best interest of our community. Homelessness, COVID. I want to do more. I am running on. I like to get things done. I know how to build coalitions. I know how to fight, even if that means taking a stand alone if necessary. And so that's why I'm running.
Okay.
And thank you for having me. And I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Senator Keohokalole, do you live inside Congressional District 1?
No, I live on the windward side. I live about 5 minutes down the hill from Ed Case, who also lives on the windward side. I grew up on Oahu. I went to high school in CD1. I went to undergraduate. I went to college in CD1. Every job I've ever had has been in CD1. I know my family and we shop at Costco. I know which Costco in CD1 is the best one to go to.
Well, you
Walmart,
have
Home
more
Depot.
than one Costco. That's a good thing. Not
I can
everybody.
tell you which ones if you want to do a ranking of the ones that are the easiest to get in and out of with a family on the 3rd of July or right before Veterans Day, I can tell you. We have a strike mission strategy on how to do it. I think what happens in CD1 impacts the entire state. That's the reality. Honolulu is the seat of power, for better or worse. It's the heart of our economy. Waikiki, our military industrial complex, the Indo-Pacific Command, our financial center, our seat of government, they are all in Oahu, in CD1. Where CD1 goes, the rest of the state goes. And as a resident of Oahu, I can tell you, people don't draw lines of responsibility when there's a problem in Hawaii. They just look for leadership and somebody who can explain what the plan is, what we're going to do to try and address the problems. And so I think that we're lacking that. I think we're lacking urgency, and I think we need energy and action to represent us in Washington. And I think we need to do better. And that's why I'm deciding to run. That's why I decided to run for this seat.
Do you think there are particular issues related to Congressional District 1, even though you don't live in it, and I understand your rationale for running now? Are there particular issues within that district that you think are not being addressed at the federal level?
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you, a lot of them are issues that Indivisible Hawaii has taken a leadership role on. But in general, we need to have a plan for our future in Hawaii. And we need to be able to get everyone in our community involved in it. And we cannot rely on whichever way the federal government is moving to dictate what's happening, our direction, our future here. I don't see that at all from my opponent. I don't see energy. I don't see fight. Uh, I never thought we'd be in a position where we're arguing for states' rights in Hawaii because of the consolidation of power at the federal government and the way it's been deployed in such an unjust manner. And there's no response on that. So we have plenty of problems. We can talk specifically about lots of solutions, but I think, the specific reason why I got involved here is we are a small delegation, only 4 members. We're not always going to have the votes. We're not always going to have the plum committee seats or the chairmanships. So we have to be able to influence the process by hustling, by fighting, by coordinating and organizing. And I don't see the energy. And so I want to do more, and I think we need more.
Well, you've talked about fighting. As you probably know, there's a lot of polls that say that Democrats most particularly, and you are running on the Democratic ticket, that younger Democrats especially feel like our federal delegation or federal Congress people in general are not fighting against authoritarianism, not fighting against corruption, not fighting against what most people see as self-dealing, doing things for their own personal profit rather than for the good of the people or the country. It sounds like you agree that there needs to be more fight. How do you go about doing that if you get elected to Congress?
Sure. There, there are a myriad of ways that are not being deployed right now, in my opinion, especially in the representation in Congressional District 1. I wonder whether by the end of his term, the Trump family will be in Bezos wealth territory with how egregious the corruption has been at the top level. It's just ridiculous. And I think there's a culture of capitulation that's going on in Congress right now. I mean, the direct answer is you need to call out every single instance this administration breaks the law. Every instance of illegality. How many more bags of cash will members of Trump's cabinet just get caught accepting, and people just look the other way? So I want my kids to understand that democracy, what it is, and that the direction we're on right now is not it. I think that's the most important thing. That fascism is not normal or acceptable. That authoritarianism is not acceptable. And so to me, there are two parts to this question. One is at the state level. We have plenty that we can do this year. There are a lot of legislators that are working on legislation right now. I'm working on legislation right now to support a lot of the model language that's come up through Indivisible nationally in the ACLU, things like no secret police, no masking, requiring law enforcement to show ID, things that are already ingrained in our law enforcement policies here that we can affirm through legislating. To make sure that we have safe community spaces. I just talked to a doctor at Queens who said that they're going through sensitive place training right now because they are afraid of what would happen if there's an ICE raid. We cannot check people's passports at the emergency room door, right? That's not acceptable. So at the state level, there are a lot of proactive things that we can do. I helped lead the passage of SB1, which fixed state law after the Dobbs decision reversed Roe versus Wade. And a lot of that was proactive legislating to make sure that the position of the state of Hawaii is clear. Now, when we get to DC, again, I think it's about asserting our Article 1 power in the Constitution. The founders started the Constitution out, Article 1, with designating the power to Congress. The president came in a later section, right? Every time there's an administrative action that attempts to water down our civil rights or constitutional protections, we need to call it out. And there are lots of different ways to do that, but we cannot allow the dismantling of agencies that were built to ensure that people get equal protection under the law, like that, so that we don't go back to redlining or police beatings or the Gilded Age of robber barons and shantytowns. Every day, every time, you have to call it out. Part of why I ran is because my opponent refused to sign on to a letter after that immigration raid on Maui. And publicly, when they asked him why, it was just a letter asking for information so people could know where their families were, whether they were at the federal detention center in Honolulu or whether they had already been shipped to El Salvador. He refused to and said he agreed with the Trump administration's immigration policy, period. That's it. And so that's not acceptable. That there's a huge chasm between what we got there and what we can do when you draw attention to instances of illegality in the administration and you fight them.
Senator Keohokalole, you talk about, every time there's something that's wrong, people in Congress need to call it out. And as you have noticed, people in Congress are not doing that. I feel like you're talking the right language, but how is it going to be for you when you go to Congress and other people are silent because they have been silent and you're speaking up? I mean, how's that going to work for you?
I've done that before at the state level. I think I feel very strongly that when something is right and it needs to happen, that it's my responsibility to speak up. That's part of why I ran for office, because I didn't like the way things were going. and I wanted to represent my community that was full of people that grew up with my family and know who I am. When I first ran for office, people would when I would knock on doors in the community, people would ask me, "Oh, who's your aunt? You know, who's Joe? Who's Emma?" And it's my grandmother, my uncle. People went to school with my family, and I felt this really deep obligation to do a good job because I was representing my family, but these were also people that knew who we were and they were part of our community. So to me, it's a big motivator to just dig in and do the hard thing. And we're not getting that right now. And when
No.
have we needed it more?
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, we all see it happening. You've talked a lot about what you've done in the state, and you are running for a federal office. You would still be in the state Senate for one more year should you win the race. And I'm just curious, why, or I guess, what do you think you can accomplish better as a federal official than as a state official? You've been in the position, in one position or another, the state house or state senate for about 11 years now. And, why leave that? Why leave that when you're in a position of power and influence with only 25 other members in the Senate?
Well, you know, we only have four members of Congress. It's small, so we need to be mighty. These are tremendously important positions for the state of Hawaii, especially in this moment we're in, where we may be headed into a downturn. I was really um, disheartened this past year in the 2025 legislature by how quickly the the backslide at the federal level made hamstrung us at the state level. It was really disturbing. The disruption that was caused under Doge when they were just slashing programs overnight, it screwed up so many different partnerships in areas of the state where we have been making progress. We have lots to do and be accountable for at the state level. So I don't want to I don't want to sugarcoat our own individual responsibility in the state, but on biosecurity, on substance abuse treatment, on homelessness, on housing. So many of our state programs are tied into federal support in the form of dollars, but also in the form of policy. And when those things get disrupted overnight, it just takes everyone's eye off the ball. And they have to scramble to go figure out whether they have a job or whether their team will be paid in the next cycle. And things just come crashing to a halt. In the long term, so that's one part of it. In the long term, you know, housing development runs based off of a system of tax credits and incentives that begin at the federal level. Education is structured the way it is in the state of Hawaii because we're a small state, but also because of the way education policy has formed over the last 100 years at the federal level. And so that you go down the line and there's a tie in our state system to some sort of federal prerogative. And when you just pull the rug out from underneath public servants in Hawaii who are trying to work collaboratively with federal partners, then it causes backslide that is hurting us at a moment where we really need to gird for what looks like some troubled times ahead.
You know, one of the things that we have talked about and will talk about is corruption. And I know at the state level, there were several bills introduced to fight corruption, whether it was, having the ICE people masked or, like bribery rules. And I know that you voted in favor of passing those kinds of bills, but they did not get passed. They were killed at the highest level of the state Senate and the state House. And that's a little disturbing to me, a little concerning that there doesn't appear to be the will, even at the state level, to advance things. How can you help if you couldn't make it happen in the state, how can you make it happen at the federal level?
I think we've done a lot on corruption since the Kealoha scandal and since the the corruption convictions in the legislature. And so because we didn't get them all, I understand why people would be critical of the effort. I think there was a panel that put forward a report that was called for by the legislature after those convictions. And I think if I don't remember the statistic right off the top of my head, I should have it ready, but you know, I think 90% of the recommendations have passed into law. The remaining ones are significant, like public financing of elections, and some of the others. And I have supported those bills. I will sign on and co-sponsor those bills again this year. Sometimes change is difficult. I'll tell you, during COVID, I helped lead the transition of the legislative process onto Zoom and YouTube, and that was a bit of a fight. People did not want to see, they did not want the public to have, not everyone, but some legislators did not want the public to see how we operate. And so we took advantage of the crisis. We needed to legislate. We needed to meet our calendar obligations. So we just kind of plowed ahead and forced the transition. And now that the process is on YouTube, you can see every single official proceeding that takes place at the legislature online, and it's archived. We just put together, I think, better work product. So but it took a while. And so just because we didn't score the touchdown yet, where we got, we're driving down the field, we got to the 10-yard line, doesn't mean we're not going to get there in the end. I would like to note, one of the significant ones that people don't talk about at all is after those bribery convictions in the legislature, because it would look weird. I think it wouldn't look ideal to have the legislators investigate themselves. We funded a public corruption unit in the state attorney general's office, and their sole obligation is to go after instances of public corruption, white collar crime, and human trafficking. We have investigators, professional investigators, and prosecutors that staff that office. And so, we have made meaningful attempts to try and promote transparency, change the way business was done before, and hold ourselves accountable. And it hasn't been perfect, and there's still more to do.
Just let me say one thing. During COVID, when you all did agree to put stuff on Zoom, and you actually allowed off-island journalists such as myself to do talk stories with the legislators. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Because other than that, people who were not on Oahu could not see what was going on. So thank you. I appreciate that. I'll give you A+ for that. I'm very happy. One of the things your campaign website says, meaning your campaign website running for U.S. Congress, CD1, is that one of your priorities is lowering costs for working families. And obviously, that's a huge issue. Affordability is kind of foremost in Hawaii because we have one of the highest costs of living of any state. So, as a state senator and former state house member, what have you done so far towards that goal? And then we can talk about what you plan to do in U.S. Congress if you're elected. But let's start with your work here in the state. Affordability. Have you helped us?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think the last year we put together, it took 2 years, but last year we passed the insurance rescue legislation that has immediately helped dozens of condominium owners across the state of Hawaii. That's my sort of everyday job as the consumer protection chair. That was our responsibility. After the Maui wildfires, insurance prices spiked, just like they did after Hurricane Iniki hit back in 1992, and insurers fled the market. And so there's been a crisis in the condominium space over the last 2 years for folks who don't live in high-rise buildings, which a lot of times are made up of retired residents on fixed incomes, or people that can't afford to deal with price spikes in insurance premiums. So worked with the House, worked with the administration, with people around the community, with the mortgage folks, insurance folks, experts. We put together legislation this past year. It was signed into law, and we've had over 60 condominium communities be able to take advantage of our state public option for insurance, and they've saved tens of thousands of dollars. So it's something that we're trying to work on every year. When I was in the House, I was part of we put together a package on affordable housing that has led to many of the affordable rental projects that are coming up in CD1 all around Honolulu, where you see tower cranes. It was the largest infusion of public money for affordable housing ever. And this year, I'm planning to move forward on a licensing regime for digital currency based off of the Genius Act that was just passed by Congress this year, which is there's a lot of speculation and scams in the cryptocurrency space. But one of the good things that happened with the passage of the federal legislation this year is when we start to adopt, when the banks and the business institutions start to adopt a digital currency regime, like they've put in place in states like New York and even in conservative states like Wyoming, you can basically skip around the debit card fee that you pay, the 2 to 3% at every store, at 7-Eleven, at McDonald's, through digital currency technology. There's a framework that needs to be put in place. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we're building out a coalition right now to figure out how to adopt that. Most of our systems in Hawaii were designed when we became a state in 1959 for a Hawaii that doesn't exist anymore, with the big five plantation companies and 400,000 people. Now it's 2025, and we have meth and cybercrime and king tides, and we have systems that are not designed to address those problems. And there's a ton of rigid rules and old objectives at the federal level that are holding us back. And so you have to be nimble and dynamic, not dynamic, but you have to have urgency and energy to try and address some of these things. Our infrastructure money for housing, healthcare, pulling back tariffs, those are the short answers. But I think it's the approach that really matters the most.
Well, I believe that Donald Trump is intending to have Congress enact legislation that prohibits states from making their own rules on, no, that's artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's
He's not
AI.
regulating the states on
Well,
cryptocurrency, right?
we're gonna do AI too, and we're gonna fight that because it's terrible. I just heard a story about a parent who discovered that his seventh grade daughter was in a relationship with a fictional character on Character AI, the application,
Yep, I
and the
heard that.
relationship was physical, and it is disgusting
Yeah,
and infuriating. So,
yeah.
again, I never thought I would be quoting Jefferson, who, I think is like a founder of the Republican Party, but he wanted states' rights for a reason, and we're starting to see it now. When you have this push toward authoritarianism, we need to assert ourselves at the state level, but we can support that effort in Washington by pushing back up there.
Vanessa tells me that we've had a whole lot of questions submitted by people who are watching this, and that's a good thing. One that has come up several times, is more prevalent than others, is about your plan to accept campaign contributions, and specifically, do you plan to accept money from political action committees, PACs? Because as you know, there has been concern about legislators being highly influenced by entities that are sort of unidentifiable. So talk about your plan for accepting campaign contributions.
Sure. Uh, I came out really early and said that I would not accept money from AIPAC. That was when I announced that was the height of the catastrophe in Gaza.
And so when
And
you say AIPAC, you mean the American Israel Public Affairs Committee,
that's
that one?
right. So I've publicly come
Okay.
out and said that I'm refusing to take money from the big five defense contractors who have poured money into my opponent's campaign, and I've refused to take money from big tech. I will answer this directly. You folks might have seen this recently. We have uh, institutions in Hawaii that we want to keep in Hawaii. We want to keep them owned by people locally. We want to keep them run by people locally. And in my role as the consumer protection chair, it's the most horrible part of my job to deal with regional managers for national or international corporations that parade into Hawaii as the head of the Southern California division, and they just treat us like we're a fingernail of their operation, and they don't care at all. And they start the meeting by gushing over how much they've done for Hawaii, and we better just go along with what they want, or they might offshore jobs or things like that. Those kinds of conversations have happened. So if there are local businesses here that want to maintain their operations here, keep their ownership and control in Hawaii, and employ local people and not offshore jobs, then I want to work with them. And we have an obligation at the federal level to help them, because we've seen too many local corporations, but these are like local institutions, just be bought up by private equity guys from who knows where outside of Hawaii. And we can't have that. We need to have the people that deliver the food to the grocery stores and the restaurants and the utilities and the insurance companies to be locally controlled, because it's so much worse when the control of these institutions gets extracted from Hawaii. So I don't mind working with them. I have told all of them no in the past. I'm trying to be pretty clear here that if I think it's the right thing to do, then I won't be swayed by some sort of influence. But I don't like the way things are going at the federal level when it comes to the corporate control at the highest levels, and I don't want anything to do with it.
Well, it's an interesting thing always, as I was talking with somebody, it costs a lot of money to run for office. The good news is you're running for Congressional District 1. You can probably go to every single person's house. Well,
There are
almost.
152,000 homes in CD1. I won both of my races as a huge underdog, knocking on doors. I'm still knocking on doors. It'll take me about 4 years to get all the way through. So we do need to raise the money, right?
I get it.
Yeah.
If you're elected, what you've talked about on your website, you talk about affordability to help to address the cost of living. What do you consider your other priorities, or what will you as a newly sworn member of Congress?
Yeah, sure. It's cost. It's the people stuff first, but I think we also have an obligation to our environment, to our communities, keeping our communities, keeping our local culture in place by allowing people to afford to stay here and take care of their families. So it's affordability, it's healthcare, it's housing, it's defending our democratic norms, and it's changing these systems that are crumbling around us or causing decay in our communities, like how we deal with homelessness, like how the federal government deals with homelessness. This is a bit of a tangent, but Trump just declared fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction. And it's because he wants to use it as a legal basis to kill people. It's so that we can continue and escalate conflict in Venezuela. It has nothing at all to do with addressing the substance abuse crisis across the country, which I will focus on the stimulant side when I get into Congress, because fentanyl is a problem in Hawaii, but no one talks about methamphetamine. Now, my opponent has never talked about it. The Hawaii State Hospital is full. 90% of the patients that are at the state hospital, which are all committed by the courts, are suffering from some level of long-term methamphetamine addiction. And the prerogative at the federal level is on opioids. It doesn't help us at all. So there are lots of little projects that I want to work on, but the big ones that are significant for the majority of the residents of our district are the ones that I am going to put the most focus on. But we have long-term things that we need to do. Red Hill, I've worked on since the spill in 2021. It is still a challenge. We still don't know how much fuel is in our aquifer. It could be up to 2 million gallons over the life of that facility. And we have not done enough on that. We've worked at the state level to put together a group to negotiate with the Navy. They refused to meet with us since Trump came in. So there are lots of long-term projects that benefit residents in the district, but also are going to have a long-term impact on everyone in the state that that I know how to that I know how to set us on a path forward on. You can be urgent and methodical at the same time. It just takes planning and it takes collaboration. And you got to be willing to talk with people that maybe you don't get along with, but you got to also work with people that are ready to go. I feel like I can do a better job at that than my opponent.
I'm intrigued that you said that the Navy has refused to meet with you since Trump came in. Has the Navy been meeting, do you know, with Congressman Ed Case?
Oh, he's taking credit for some of the appropriations that he's put through the appropriation committee to deal with filtration and to deal with the victims. I would, if he were participating in this forum and I know you folks asked him, I would ask him where all that was in 2019 when he was in office, in 2020, in 2021 before the spill, when Ernie Lau was shouting from the rooftops that this thing was a ticking time bomb. Why was Kai Kahele, the representative for Congressional District 2, the neighbor islands, why was he the one who brought the bottle of fuel-tainted water to Congress to get everyone's attention when the Navy daily up to that point was saying there's no problem, the water's okay to drink. Actually, it's okay to drink unless it smells like fuel. It's okay to use, just don't wash anything with it. Why was the other congressional representative who doesn't actually represent the people in that area the one who had to stick his head out and say something about it? So the Red Hill Y Initiative is an initiative that I co-chaired with Representative Linda Ichiyama at the state level. We put together a report that we worked on with the Board of Water Supply, and we included leadership from the governor's office, the city council chair, the Senate president, the Speaker of the House, the mayor, and we went and did the work ourselves on what we think long-term needs to happen. And part of that includes a joint effort with the Navy and the state and the Board of Water Supply to monitor what's going on under the ground over there so that we can be sure, not just take the Navy's word for it because their monitoring wells are coming up clear, not take a deal to just put in filtration and not worry about what's in the ground, to actually go and figure out what's happening and address it.
Good idea. We have another question submitted by people who are watching this forum. At the federal level, as you well know, the Supreme Court, which at this point has a more conservative majority, has been, the wording from some of the people is running roughshod over the rule of law, but basically making rulings that don't seem consistent in many people's minds with our Constitution. So the solution to that problem or that issue, what do you think the solution is? Is it term limits? Is it putting more people on the Supreme Court? Many people have suggested options, and Congress can do this. Maybe not now under a current Republican majority, but maybe in the future. What do you think the solution is?
Excuse me. I mean, the straightforward solution as set up in the Constitution is for Congress to take action. Basically, my view of what the Supreme Court has done up to this point is they've been trying to make themselves useless. They've been undoing rulings that they have issued over the last 100 years. And anytime there's a controversial question, they have said the court is not going to do anything about it. And so the default in the law is for that power to cede back to the administration. But in every one of these rulings, sort of the silver lining there is that they defer to the will of Congress on whatever the issue is. There hasn't been a Supreme Court issue, a ruling since this conservative majority took over that cannot be addressed by congressional action. There has not been one. And this culture, like I said, I mean, it's a culture of capitulation at this point. We need to take back the House and the Senate. There are lots of different ways to push back against the Supreme Court, including asserting ourselves at the state level. but fundamentally, Congress needs to assert itself. Again, it's the first thing the founders did when they sat down to write the Constitution is they established Congress because it's the most important piece.
So right now, you're in the state Senate, you're one of 25, and you have power and influence, I would have to say. You talk just the answer you just gave and several previous answers clearly has to do with your ability as a member of a 435 person body, that would be the US Congress, to influence others to do the right thing in your mind. And as you've described the right thing, for example, addressing Supreme Court issues, taking charge. Talk about how you've been able to demonstrate leadership even when you were not quite as influential at the state level, and how you plan to bring your influence where you want to do what you feel is the right thing to your 435 member body if you are elected to represent Congressional District 1. So, what did you do here, and what are you going to do there?
Yeah, I think I have a passion for this job that uh, that has given confidence in my colleagues to let me take the hard stuff. I don't think it's because my singing voice or my slim figure, because those are not things.
Are you going to
Uh,
sing now? You didn't
no,
mention that earlier.
absolutely not.
Okay.
My wife can sing. She's very good, and very pretty. That- I feel like I've been given these responsibilities because I have instilled confidence in my colleagues that I run to the hard stuff and I can take it on and I can address the issues in a responsible and effective way. And so that absolutely translates to Congress. It's a big town up there. There's lots to do, and you have to be more dynamic in representation than being able to any you know than shouting through a bullhorn. That stuff is important at the right time, but you have to know when, and you have to be able to organize people and collaborate. And so that's really what I like to do, and that's my style of legislating. I like to meet with groups that are already doing things. I can be second banana. I don't have to be in the front on anything, but have a conversation about process and about what everyone's capacity is, a clear-eyed one, and then let's figure out how we can be the most effective. It isn't always about passing legislation. Like I said, one of the reasons I decided to run against Ed is because he refused to sign on to that letter that the delegation sent to ICE after ICE agents, they were actually commandeered Homeland Security interdiction agents, like the SWAT team, raided a teacher housing unit on Maui early in the morning. They kicked the door down SWAT style because that's what they're trained to do. They're trained to go after uh, drug traffickers and organized crime. They zip tied everybody. They hauled them out. They threw them on the ground. They zip tied them all, and then they figured out uh, who were undocumented and who weren't. Turns out everybody had legal status, right? The point of the letter was to draw attention to this ridiculous abuse of force and to provide some clarity to the families involved about what was going on and what the process is going forward. And so you have to be able to show leadership uh, in those ways, even when you don't have the votes. I've lost votes. I supported Alapaki Nahale as to be reconfirmed as the chair of the UH Board of Regents. We lost 13-12, but we changed the conversation around the university, and that has percolated on through since. I lost the vote last year about Hawaiian Electric, but we had a conversation about what the right way is to help that organization, help everyone in the state without giving away too much and having the residents and the taxpayers subsidize them. I lost that vote 20-5. You can go down swinging and have an impact, and you got to be strategic and effective about it. And it's what I like to do.
Senator Keohokalole, here's a personal question, which is we had a recent member of the US House who was there for, I don't remember if it was a year or a little more, and then realized that it was a really big challenge to work in Washington and have a family here in Hawaii. Talk about
Yeah.
whether you really are willing to make, and your family is willing to make, what I think is a really hard sacrifice to serve in Washington, be there as necessary, and do that job while still maintaining a base here in Hawaii.
Yeah, sure. The other one I get asked that a lot, and the other one I get asked is why would you go up there when it's so toxic? And and
He's got to do it.
that's it for me is I want to be where it matters, and because that's the place where you have the best chance of making a difference. And when have the stakes been higher for Hawaii? When has it mattered more? And so we're prepared to go. Uh, my wife was at my announcement and she said it for herself. We can go repost that stuff online if you want to hear it from her. I think there's a significant difference between having two kids in preschool and having two out of the three kids in high school. One of them is going to be a senior by the time this all shakes out.
Mhm.
We have a very supportive and we're very lucky to have both grandparents here. And so we have a stable support network in Hawaii, but we're all going to go up. We used to live in New York City, and my wife actually worked in Ku'ulani. She worked in DC while we were up there. So we're familiar with how it's too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter and the time change. And at some point throughout the year, it goes from 5 hours to six. I think I really I'll just tell a story. My grandfather was one of the first taxi drivers on the Windward side back in the 50s. And when I was first running for office, I knocked on the door and a kupuna came out and she told me a story about how as a child he took her and her mother to over the mountain to Aloha Tower, the Woolworth at Aloha Tower to buy school clothes. And he waited for her all day. And my grandfather died before I was born. I didn't know that story. And uh, so again, I feel this really deep obligation to uh, to serve the whole community. These folks who know my family. And I also feel a deep obligation to pass on the reputation that my grandfather must have established for himself for people to think so well of me when they didn't know who I was. And that's not gonna make a difference if there aren't more Keohakaloles here running around in our community. And so we're willing to go and do this,
Meaning the whole family,
the whole family,
wife and kids.
because
Okay.
because I want other families to be able to stay.
But what's your commitment to coming back and meeting with constituents, which is clearly a big part of your obligation if you're a member of US Congress?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a red eye Thursday, and then you come back Sunday, right? There's a big recess in August. There's another one in December, and there's another one in February. Uh, Sincerely, we're going together because we're a family and we want to stick together. And we had this conversation with the grandparents. Ku'ulani and I have had it, and we had it with the kids.
Mhm.
And we're gonna go because we're gonna stay together. And on the long nights or when there's a controversy or something, I'm willing to tell the community back in Hawaii, hey, this one's tough. I gotta stay. We'll come back next weekend or we'll reschedule. Um, that's part of the job. That's the job, and we knew it, and it's something that I'm prepared to do. I'm 42. I've been in the legislature for 12 years. I feel like this is a moment where I can do this and I can make a commitment to go up there and do it the right way, which means digging in, taking time to learn the system and the process and build relationships with people over the long term. Because that's the job that needs to be done for Hawaii in this role. And it's something that excites me because of how significant it is. And the moment that we're in right now, I think demands someone who's willing to make that kind of commitment.
We are getting short on time, but we have time for one more audience question before we go to your final comments, for anything that we haven't talked about. But there's been several questions. You
Lao
mentioned
Lao
that,
is my favorite food. Blue.
not those kind of questions. One of the things you said is priority is the environment. And clearly, climate change is something we here in Hawaii acknowledge because we can see it happening, even though at the federal level, some seem to think it's not happening. But what are your plans at the federal level to address climate change in Hawaii? And please try to make sure your answer is not too long so we can give you time for closing comments.
Sorry, I got all worked up
Excited?
there about ice. Uh, things have never been worse for climate under this administration. This is where the fight part comes in that we were discussing. There's times to be strategic and there's times to fight. I'm an administrative lawyer by training, and I think that one of the things that a congressperson can do immediately that has more influence than the layperson and doesn't require having a majority is to dig in on administrative rules and try and slow down the backslide that's happening there. Those, the EPA, the Customs and Border Patrol when it comes to biosecurity, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, those laws are not being changed. The implementation of those laws are being changed through the agencies. And that stuff is technical and complicated and it can get boring, but it has serious impact in Hawaii and across the country. And a lot of the climate change efforts that have really started to make a difference across the country have happened through those type of agency changes, like NOAA, for example. Papahana o moku akea. So I'm kind of bouncing around, but there's a lot to do, even in a minority, to slow down the dismantling of action on climate, and then you can work through community action and coalitions to prepare when there is a change in power, and we can go again, and we can make significant, meaningful policy changes, but also to figure out where locally we can pick up the slack and keep these projects moving. That's the important part when you do policy is sometimes there are slow times because things happen or the economy goes down and you can't fund things at the rate you want. And then sometimes you get all the right players involved and you get support from every level of the administration and you got to go right away and make change. So I know how to do that, but the most important part is you have to have that conversation with people in the community so that everybody knows what's going on.
How do you think at the federal level you can get some of the other members of Congress to understand and deal with the climate change issue? Because
Yeah, so I had an interesting conversation with Hawaiian Electric after the fires on Maui, in Lahaina and Kula, when they had to go up and talk to they were called to appear before Congress in a hearing. And so them, but I've also heard in other conversations across the country, you have legislators, Congress people, Republicans in a lot of cases from red Trump country districts who are talking about historic drought, who are talking about historic flooding and the impacts that those historic natural disaster events are having to their farmers, their constituents. I'm not above negotiating how we want to call the thing if we can get an agreement that we're going to address the problem, that we're going to find a solution, right? The Republicans can call it whatever they want, but if we're going to take action on climate, then we're getting action on climate. And then I can come back to the community over here and explain why we said the thing the way we did, right? It's about being effective and finding solutions that are going to impact the future in a positive way.
Senator Jarrett Keohokalole, we so much appreciate your taking the time to talk story. And what I'd like to do before we go back to Vanessa, who's going to make some closing comments, is give you an opportunity to tell me anything, tell us anything that we haven't talked about. Tell us why you'd be the best member of the U.S. Congress. Take 2 minutes. Go for it.
2 minutes. Thank you so much. Happy holidays, everyone, for having me. I'm running because I'm worried about what's the Hawaii that we're going to hand over to our kids. And ultimately, I got involved in public service because I didn't want to, hand over a world to my grandchildren where they'd come and go, why is it on fire? What happened? Lots of people feel that way. And so I've just tried to get in the fight, and run to the hard problems and just get involved. I don't know everything. I'm not perfect. My record hasn't been perfect, but I care and I'm willing to talk to anyone, and I'm willing to lead, and I'm willing to work together with people that are already doing the work, and find ways to just make things happen and push things forward. Because I think we need to be responsible. We need to take accountability for the future if we don't like the way we see things going. And so that's why I want to run. And I really appreciate the chance to talk to everyone. Please reach out to us, jarrettforcongress.com, JARRETT. And happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Aloha, everyone.
Thank you so much, Senator. And now let's go back to Vanessa Zapata because she's going to give us some final comments on behalf of Indivisible Hawaiʻi. Vanessa?
Yes, Sherry, I'm just going to pull up. We have a little closing slide. I've got to share it with everybody here. Well, first of all, I want to thank Jarrett Keohokalole.
Turn on your
Thank you,
camera,
Senator.
Vanessa.
I can't do all of this.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I got it.
There she is.
Thank you, Senator. That was really great conversation. And thank you to everybody that tuned in. We've got so many questions. And it'll definitely be great fuel for our follow-up survey. So friendly reminder that we will be sending a follow-up survey after probably either tomorrow night or on Thursday after the next talk story that we were going to have tomorrow. So please tune in for that, and please again try to fill out that survey as promptly as possible. Sherry, I want to thank you as well on behalf of Indivisible for taking the time to volunteer today, and as well for volunteering tomorrow. A friendly reminder that these recordings, if you have registered for these talks, recordings will be available. So if you can't make tomorrow's or anything like that, please review those recordings, especially before you fill out that follow-up survey. And finally, just Hawaiʻi is we have this huge primary election coming up, you guys, in August. It'll be in our flash, so it's never too soon to start registering to vote or updating your registration, or if you've moved or you've changed your name. These are the things we have to do to participate in our democracy. So again, thank you, Senator. That was great. Thank you, Sherry, and thank you to everybody who tuned in. Those questions were amazing. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them. Yeah, so this is Vanessa with Indivisible signing out. We'll see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. We'll be interviewing Representative Della Bellotti.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.